Man Radio. Florida Man Radio. The views and opinions on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting, management, or its sponsors.
Working class in a place they call the Bronx. Learned on the corner about the school of hard knocks. Found out his rap could be his salvation. Well, now he's talking all across the nation. It's the Ed Tyll Show. It's the Ed Tyll Show. Come on, everybody. It's Ed Tyll. Now that you tuned him in, you know what I mean. People call him up, discussing every scene. Love him or hate him, he's gonna have his say. He's gonna speak his mind each and every day. It's the Ed Tyll Show. It's the Ed Tyll Show. Come on, everybody. It's Ed Tyll.
It is the Ed Tyll Show. It's unavoidable. I don't, all day yesterday. I'm like, did you jinx this for your poor aunt? I said, hard to believe. I said yesterday, hard for me to believe. 21 days after her COVID diagnosis, my Aunt Adeline, the Rock of Gibraltar, the toughest gal in the neighborhood growing up, fantastic at work. She was an incredible advertising agency gal, worked for the Hearst Public. She did everything there was to do, a professional woman. Then she had my cousin John, and I had my Aunt Addie all through my childhood. Incredible. And very sadly, COVID did take her this morning. So we're thinking about the show. We had to reorganize what we were doing. Her son and I are both only sons of these two amazing women. Now, my mom passed a while ago, but that was Aunt Addie's other half. Tina and Adeline were inseparable since the 1920s when they were hanging out together. So I wasn't sure what we would do with the show. I want to obviously pay tribute to her. There's also a relatability, I think, for people to say, geez, everyone is experiencing loss. So I think that's valuable to, the experience kind of, demystifies for others and says, we're all in this together. But then Renee Baker reached out to us today. I've had Renee Baker on the show in the past. She's terrific. But what a coincidence. You talk about the universe reaching out to you. So, I don't know, it was about an hour or so ago, maybe not even, Renee, you reached out to us today by happenstance. And here you are on the air with us. Thank you. You have a powerful story to tell. But this is how the universe works, right?
Absolutely, Ed. And I'm so sorry about your aunt. And please send my condolences to your cousin.
Oh, yeah, you got it, mate. We're, when Italian boys lose their moms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're tough guys. We're tough guys. We don't sit around and look at our navels. But on a day like today, I loved that my cousin could cry to me. I didn't need to cry. He needed to just unload. I mean, he's after Trump. He's after the whole world did this. And I want to give him whatever he wants. If he wants my help in going after the world, he can have it on the day his mom passes. But on the phone, you know how this is. You want to be hugging. You want to be holding. You want to be the strong one. You want to let him cut. So this is the roller coaster that I come to you off of. But I will say, just like the doctor that you're going to talk about, when you lean into the problem, when you lean into the crisis and you feel the humanity inside the crisis, you will also benefit. you will get some benefit from that act, not just the people that you
Sure.
reach to. So I feel that from your doctor and the story you're about to tell. Feel it from my cousin. Welcome aboard. Horrible circumstances, but what brought you to the side of that doctor to hear his story and tell the audience about the doctor a little bit?
I will. It was such a gift. Well, just for a little bit of background, my life's work is usually it's in holiday spirit and music and coaching children to prepare them for their auditions for Broadway, television, and film productions. But in February, I was driving my daughter from New Jersey, where I live, to Los Angeles via a concert tour that she had set up. And I drove myself back in 3 days from Los Angeles. So I woke up the last morning in Missouri, and I ended up in New Jersey 16 hours later. And I realized, I should fill in my slow hours and weeks being a rideshare driver. I mean, I love driving. I'm a good driver, and I love talking to people. So I started in late February this year, and I loved it.
Wow.
So, of course, my first couple of weeks were very different from my last few weeks. At first, I was driving students, and they were going to school, and people to parties, from bars, and all sorts of different people to and from all sorts of different jobs. In my last 2 to 3 weeks of driving, when social distancing was being enforced, it was almost exclusively about getting essential workers to and from their jobs. So, essentially, I was an essential worker myself.
Right.
And I live alone, and I knew I might get sick. But I felt that I would be healthy enough to get through it and come out the other end with antibodies and give plasma and get back to driving people to their jobs safely. So these people were mostly healthcare professionals and grocery store workers and even flight attendants. And they thanked me for continuing to drive. They said they needed drivers like me to get them to their jobs. So I would strike up conversations with any of them who seemed interested. Fast forward to Thursday, March 26th. I picked up an ER doctor, Dr. Frank Gabrin. Of course, I thanked him for his service and sacrifice right off the bat. And I asked him how he was and what it was like for him in the ER these days. And he told me that he had just finished his third 12-hour night shift in a row. And I said, I should just let you sleep then. And he said, no, that's okay. This was a New Jersey hospital, and I was driving him to his home in New York City. So I asked how he and the others were doing, and he told me it was rough. He said normally in non-COVID times they would only need to wear PPE, the personal protective equipment, about 3 times a week.
Right.
Now they needed to wear it all day, all through a 12-hour shift, which he said was impossible, and it's extremely tiring and irritating to even try. I'm sure you've seen the pictures.
Right.
And although I read an article where the head of that particular hospital in New Jersey that he worked for said that they had plenty of PPE, he told me they did not, and that he had been wearing the same mask for 12 hours in a row, 4 days in a row the week before, and trying to sanitize it and use it over and over again. And he said it's even worse for the nurses because the boss would get new masks for the doctors here and there when they weren't available for the nurses. And he said the morale among the staff at the hospitals was low. And he said that the nurses were beginning to get fevers and be sent home. And I asked, are there replacements for these nurses? And he said, no. And he said it was getting so bad that the administrators told the doctors that, this is going to upset you, even if they got sick, they would still need to come in.
Yeah, right.
That's shocking, but that's what he said.
Right.
And then he began to tell me about how the day before he had lost his first patient of COVID-19. Now, normally in the ER, he wasn't able to bond with the patients. He'd give them emergency life-saving treatment, and they'd be whisked away to an upstairs room,
right.
outside the ER.
Yeah.
But with this pandemic and the hospitals bursting at the seams, it was different, and all those patients were down there for days, and so he'd formed a bond with this woman. Now, he told me about how COVID-19 attacks the lungs, and I'd like to share that with your listeners because this information may have saved my life.
Yeah.
So he said that the mucus gets very hard and thick, and it becomes impossible for the patient to expel, to cough it up. It becomes like a cement in the lungs, and it clogs the millions of little holes, the alveoli, in the lungs, and it prevents the exchange from gas. It prevents the exchange of gas from oxygen to carbon dioxide,
you know what?
and it prevents
Honestly,
the patient from getting.
let me just jump in here. We've talked about this a couple of times. That's a technical, but that is exactly it. The air gets to those alveoli, but it can't process the air into useful oxygen for the blood.
Yeah.
So they watch the number. My aunt went through this. Your oxygen needs to be 95 and higher. When you get into the 80s, it's very bad. And what happens there is, it's just like anything else. The body is trying to make it happen. So the numbers can move on you, but you start to drift into a range that even though you're fighting, it's a decline. So this is, we actually, people, we did learn this in health class. We did learn when we were kids how these things work. Now we find it useful the way you do, instead of looking at this like a monster or an unknowable. We want to try and understand exactly what's happening. I really do appreciate this, Renee. Go on.
Right, and I'll tell you in a little bit about how that actually helped me in a practical way. But like you were saying, there's the pulse ox, and if it gets now normally in the ERs they would use CPAPs. You've heard of CPAPs and sleep apnea, and something called BiPAPs that I hadn't heard of yet. But he said that those send germs back out into the air like crazy, so those were taken off the table with COVID-19. And there's two other devices that they can use down to certain critical pulse ox levels. And at that point, they need the ventilator. They need to intubate the patient. And that is very dangerous for the doctors because the doctor needs to get right in front of the patient's face, like 6 inches away. So they have to get into those suits that he says look like an astronaut suit. And he told me something I didn't know. He said there's fans inside those suits to keep them from getting too hot, overheated, and to keep the visor across the eyes from fogging up. But this particular hospital and the poorer hospitals can't afford the batteries for those fans, so they have to use it without the fans. And he said the woman that he was intubating during that time, his visor was completely fogged up the entire time. Yeah. And she died within 4 minutes of being intubated, and it was really hard on him. And so anyway, on our ride, it was a 35-minute ride, and we talked the whole way. This was early in the morning, 6:30. And he told me how he'd written a book 7 years earlier called Back from Burnout. I'll give you the subtitle, too. 7 Steps to Healing from Compassion Fatigue and Rediscovering Your Heart of Care. So that was a book, and I remembered that name, Back from Burnout. So he told me how he was a 2-time cancer survivor and how he just got married 7 months earlier. And I dropped him off at his home in New York City, just marveling at the wonderful conversation we'd had. And I turned off my Lyft app, and I started speaking everything I could remember that he'd said into my memo app. Now, I hadn't caught his last name, but in my mind he was Dr. Frank. But I remembered the name of his book, and I went home and I ordered it right away. So the next day, I noticed my first dry coughing. So I self-quarantined.
Oh, my God. The next day, 24 hours or less after he was in the car with you, you have
I didn't get it from him.
A dry cough 24 hours after being near a doctor who intubates from 6 inches away dying people. If that's not a crazy scenario, wow. Okay, so you get a dry cough. Now what?
Yeah, so I get a dry cough, and I immediately I noticed it the second half of the next day, and so I immediately, as I always told myself I would, as soon as I feel any symptoms, I'm going to self-quarantine, and I did. And so I remembered what Dr. Frank had told me about the mucus. So I, being a singer, I'm very sensitive to these things. I stopped drinking coffee, which I noticed for me makes my mucus thicker and harder. And I started taking liquid Mucinex, and I started gargling with another tool from my singer's toolbox. It's a mucus solvent called Alkalol, not alcohol. Alkalol. It's also a nasal rinse, but it's a mucus solvent. So I was doing everything I could to make sure that this mucus didn't get thick and settle in my lungs.
Right.
And I also started living off of this warm, fresh ginger root and turmeric brew that a friend had told me about, which, of course, that boosts the immune system, but it also takes down inflammation.
Right.
And I swear, I was drinking that all day long. I'm still drinking it all day long. And whenever I did start to feel the constriction around my chest and I began to get a little worried about my breathing,
right,
I would drink some of that, and it always made me feel better. And I also did a lot of breathing and vocal exercises in the shower with the hot water going on my back. Anyway, so I tested positive for the virus, and I had some really rough days, but I was able to manage it all at home. So Easter Sunday, I hadn't been out for several days, but I felt great that day. So I took my first walk, and I went to my mailbox, and the book was there. So I brought it in, and I opened it, and there was his face, big and bright, right on the cover. And I thought, we had such a great talk. I'm going to look him up on Facebook. I think he'll be happy to hear from me. And I did. And Ed, he was already gone.
Wow.
I found out that I had driven him home from his last hospital shift.
Wow.
And he developed symptoms later that very morning. And 5 days later, he was gone. He was the first ER doctor in America to die of COVID-19. And when he was in the car with me, I asked him what he wanted people to know. Can I get a little political here?
Well, you know what? I just want to remind myself, this is a man who had cancer twice. So he was not a healthy man. This is not a healthy man. This is a cancer survivor.
Well, he was recovered
2 whacks. Yeah, but 2
years
whacks. He's getting 2 whacks. He's not ordinary. What was his age approximately? Approximately how old?
He was 60.
There you go. So 60 without 2 cancer episodes, 60 with 2 cancer episodes is a world of difference. I'm trying to understand how he gets whacked so fast. So go ahead. This hits you like a ton of bricks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so, he told me because I let him know that I sometimes speak on the radio and, it was a message that he wanted to get out. And at that time, now remember, this was March 26th.
Right.
It was a Thursday morning. And he said that at that time, he was furious at President Trump.
Right.
For his messaging, because remember back then he was saying that he wanted the churches filled, all the seats filled on Easter Sunday, and so Dr. Frank said, if I'm going to risk my life and the life of my family, then the least he could do is come to professionals who are actually dealing with this to get answers before carelessly making a comment like that. People will die if they believe him. And he said it really brings down the morale of the doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals who have people acting and talking so cavalierly about this. It really brings them down. And I know we're out there applauding for them at 7 o'clock every night, right? Well, this is something we can actually do to show them that we care and appreciate them, is listen to them when they say, take this illness seriously. This virus really is serious. The hospitals, when they peak, really do burst at the seams, and it's extremely hard on them. Now, he did have a silver lining, and I thought this was really neat. He said, he kind of muses about the fact that he's a scientist, he's a doctor, but he's also spiritual. And he said, I believe that this is a spiritual moment in history where we actually have to face the fact that we are all connected, and what we do. Yeah,
I need you to know I reject all this. This is 100% reject. I mean, he's entitled. Everybody's, but this is nonsense. We are not all. Honestly, it's too much, though. It's too much. It's too much layering of syrup. Okay, here's what's real. This society is made up of individual people. We are not any one big thing. Every individual has rights under the Constitution as an individual human being attached to no one. There are absolutely, if you check your Constitution, and I love it, there's nothing in there forcing anything. It tells you how to do things, but you're not conscripted in there to fight a war. You're not forced to go see this hospital, and if you want to take witch doctor herbs and spices in America, you're allowed. Witch doctor herbs and spices next to CVS, you're allowed. This country says, First Amendment, witch doctor spices are equal to fancy chemotherapy. That's a lesson about America. Only in America is the witch doctor equal to the genius at Harvard. Because the founders were smart enough to know, Dr. Fauci, Harvard, not flawless. We don't want people to put faith into an institution made by man. Man lies, cheats, and steals since Cain and Abel. So they knew who's the sovereign in America? The citizen. The citizen stands apart and says, you are there to serve me. I am not conscripted to your health care, to your military. I'm not conscripted to anything. The founders said, you don't owe the country anything. You can come to this country, live as a citizen, and do nothing because that's a free country. So I have to say, my heart breaks for him. And my cousin is singing this, and I also am backing him up. He's allowed. They're all allowed. But you have to say, enough is enough. We're not in your house. You don't tell me how to live. You give me the facts, then I shut the door. You don't have a right to know what I did with your information. You don't have a right to contact trace me. You have no right to do that. I understand you feel you need to. Oh, believe me, we could talk about that. I don't dismiss people saying, I need to know. I will listen to you, but you won't obligate me. You're not going to rope me in like a cattle. Because when I see government geniuses wrong about Vietnam, government geniuses wrong about Love Canal, government geniuses wrong about drinking water in Michigan a few years ago, or in Delaware where I was living and almost poisoned all these poor black people because nobody cares about poor black people in all-white Delaware, Governor Manchin. The people in Delaware care about each other, but that governor never set foot in a town where they couldn't drink. So the public says, they come out all the time with answers. But now the president that's so hated is like that a citizen, skeptical. When the Pentagon says something, I don't automatically believe it, he says. When Fauci walks in, you listen. You don't genuflect. Fauci is not Stephen Hawking. He's not Einstein. So this is what I object to. We can't deify, and we can't take from individuals. You know, look, very uncomfortable to see people say, I got my gun and I'm not staying in the house. That doesn't make me feel good. But why are they feeling they have to arm themselves? Because it is an overreaching government. It's a government that tells them what to do all the time, and everybody knows. Government's not that smart. Government makes mistakes on people. Should we have had masks on from day one? The theory was, no one wants to say that because they know the masks aren't there and people will panic. Now, that's immoral. You owe it to the American people to say, look, we'd love you to have a mask on. We're making them as fast as possible. But don't pretend that there's no mask necessary. Then come out and say, everybody's got to have one. So that's the state of government that a lot of people say, if you want to have faith in that, that's where you want to go to the doctor with these people? You want the government to control everything? You could do that, but don't rope me in. I'm not going with you. I don't trust them. I don't hate them. You know, people go, oh, they hate. It's not hatred. When you go to a Department of Motor Vehicle like I did, and they get your name wrong, and you got to go back in for 2 hours and stand online, you say to yourself, what? I'm not angry at the woman, but it would have been nice if she looked at my birth certificate. I mean, how long was I? So what I'm saying is we don't lose our mind, but when we leave, we go, you know something? If we were at a private company, right, and we paid for something, and it was not right, we would be, hey. But what are you going to do? You're at motor vehicle. You take what you get. So this is troubling to people who don't want to take what they get. They're like, dude, I can do better without this take what you get crap. So do I respect those folks? My own cousin is coming. I mean, I love him. Whoever he needs to be, and the same thing with this doctor, whoever he's upset with is fine. I get it. It's legit. But we're still, Renee, we're people. A guy says, somebody drank bleach because Trump talked. Come on, man. If you drank bleach, I made a joke. Do you know Steely Dan, the band? He made the same joke yesterday. They go, what are you doing?
Donald Fagen?
Donald Fagen said, I'm at home drinking bleach under a sun lamp. Ha ha.
Oh, a lot of people are doing that, yeah, of course, after
That's
Trump
a good
does it.
joke.
But when you're the leader of the world,
No. Hold on. See how you did that? No, he wasn't doing it on top of Trump. He joked it on his own, as I did. I got yelled at for that joke 2.5 weeks ago. My friend said to me, don't ever joke about that. Somebody will hear you on the air and drink bleach and die. I said, come on. He goes, I'm serious. So this is how uptight and anal retentive we're becoming. In other words, if I want what Trump really said, word for word, A million people have said, my dad said this 50 years ago. You see something in front of your face that works, and you say, why can't you inject that and have it work? Not inject the Lysol. Why don't you have help for people that works like that? He's a builder. He doesn't know science. My dad didn't know science. They're not saying drink bleach. And what Howard Stern the other day? Howard Stern, I get him. I know Howard. I get him. But he really pissed off my friends the other day. He goes on the air. He says, you like Trump? Drink some disinfectant and hope you all die. It'd be good if you died. What kind of way is that to talk about people? Okay. So my friend took it seriously. My friend canceled Sirius. My friend's like, F you, man. I've been listening to you for years. You can suck it now. You can suck it now. Did you just tell me that I should drink bleach and die because I'm on the other side politically? And I didn't feel that way when it was said, but I felt him. I was ready to go to town for my buddy and say, well, let's tell Stern, anybody, you don't want to be joking now. I hope you die. Right. That's not good. That's not good sarcasm. And my sarcasm, I think, is harmless. I think Donald Fagen's being harmless. I'm under a sun lamp drinking my bleach. That's harmless. He's a rock and roll singer. He's not giving you... So, I don't know, Renee, people a little bit crazy, right? Isn't this making people crazy?
It is making people crazy, but when you've got somebody who's the leader of the country, and many would say the world, and then you feel a lot of people under his thumb, like an abuse of power. You've got governors feeling like they've got to act a certain way. I can understand that coming from him, it's a lot more serious. But also Dr. Gabriel, he was concerned about just anybody downplaying the seriousness of this virus and bringing down the morale of the hospital workers. Anyone who's not taking it seriously, anybody who's not following these guidelines right now, it's a slap in the face to our frontline
Renee,
workers.
we can't be that sensitive. We gotta let people
I disagree with you.
Right, that's what I mean. I understand. We don't want what you want. We don't want everybody nice on the same page. That's crazy, stupid, has nothing to do with America. America is you get to be different. You get to stand apart.
But when it is peaceable...
Doesn't matter. This is all opinion. Those are all adjectives, opinion. Peaceable, the right time, appropriate. These are all subjective calls by individuals speaking.
Sure.
How are you going to get it? Why would you expect 350 million people to jump when anybody speaks? And how can I respect them? If the 350 million people jump in front of one individual, that looks like Hitler. I don't go for everybody jumps under one guy. I go for you say what you want, and when the guy is wrong, should he be crucified now? What is it? What's the proper punishment for violating how upset people are? What should we do? Set him on fire? I don't understand. The amount of anger toward him speaks to the emptiness in the people attacking him. It comes from their emptiness. They have nowhere to go with their fear and pain. So it's so easy to put it on the orange president we hate. We know we hate him. It's got to be. It can't be us. We couldn't have screwed up and not had enough stuff. We couldn't have. A governor's not responsible for what he's got in the warehouse. Obama's not responsible. The only one is effing Trump. He killed the people. He cut off New York. He's a murderer because he's a right-wing Klan murdering, Charlottesville, white supremacist. Don't you guys know he's El Diablo? Yeah, I mean, it's silly. I mean, now it does sound like a children's villain. Let's have a children's villain. Yes, he wants to murder the whole town. Yes, he's I mean, where's the reality?
Well, I think the reality is when people feel like they have to get out there and rally, they take his words and say, we've got to liberate our state. We have the right to peaceably assemble. But here's a question for you, Ed. Is it peaceably assembling when you don't know if you're armed and dangerous? I mean, I know a lot of them are carrying guns, and as you said earlier, that's upsetting. But most of them don't know. We don't know several days before you actually get this virus. And because I've got it, I've been doing a lot of studying, a deeper dive in my studying, and I'm finding out that they now believe that, Dr. Fauci himself said that 50% of people actually have it without symptoms. And so you've got these people going around, or you emit 1,000 times more of the virus in the early days that you have it when you might not know it than even they did with SARS. So that my point is that you don't know if you're armed and dangerous. And maybe if you're somebody who remains asymptomatic, I've heard people say on the radio, I'll deal with it if I get sick. I'll deal. But the thing is, you don't know. Maybe you survive it. Let me just tell you from my own personal experience, one of the things that haunts me is I don't know how long I was contagious while I was driving. Now, I found out about Dr. Gabrin because I remembered the name of his book and I looked him up. That's why I know that he's gone. What about all of those other? I was driving about 17 people
Right, but see,
a day.
here's the thing. It does sound like it's getting hysterical. I don't understand why some Americans don't trust others to be as responsible and smart just because they dress differently, just because they're 1,000 miles away. I don't understand. They don't have no trouble trusting themselves. I know that I'm reasonable. That guy's a nut job. This is ridiculous. Nobody knows.
True.
So the assumption is all they're nuts. We're the only smart ones. That's come on. Everybody knows that's not true. How are
But
they?
it's not always an assumption. You see people out there. It's only when we both.
But
have
when
masks
they're
on
out
that
there,
we're
but
actually protecting each other.
Renee, when they're out
Yeah.
there, what is bothering you when you look at them? Are you measuring on your TV? Did you close? Are you watching which direction they exhale? I mean, when you get down to it, can we see? It is a little bit odious, insulting to the American idea that we would be micromanaging individual humans on a judgment call. Nobody's got any certainty. This is a judgment call. Err on the side of caution has gotten the world through the 20th century, right? Is the 20th century, err on the side of caution. Prevention before treatment. Isn't that was the 20th century, right?
Well, yeah, but we lost the opportunity to prevent this, didn't we?
Well, I don't. Who you blame it? You can't. This is crazy. I don't know. So nature. Do you want to be angry at Mother Nature? Are you angry at the planet everybody wants to save?
Mother Nature.
Well, that's why. How do you know she didn't do this? How do you know?
Well,
how do you know?
actually a
You
really
don't
good
know.
point.
You don't know. You don't know if
She might
nature.
have pressed the reset button. I actually like that
Listen,
idea.
Mother Nature kills every day. Mother Nature kills every single day. Yes or no? Rivers, floods.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So let's not get all crazy. We don't want to get alarmed about every single thing. We want to keep it in proportion. That's not getting people's. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
If
Well,
you
we
want,
do
if you
know-
want
we do
everybody,
know that-
if you want everybody to act the same way, and unilaterally reject Trump's approach and go all with the approach you prefer, I just think it's not realistic. That's not an America anybody wants to live in. We're not a country
I'm not
of
trying to make this all about Trump either. I am really trying to say people, listen to the medical professionals.
Well,
listen
but
to what
remember,
they're going through, and do your best. You got
yeah, but
2
you got to
months of
remember the
of
medical
suffering.
right. But we must say out loud. It must be said. Medical professionals failed here. Medical professionals have done some horrible things in terms of, was your hospital ready? Do you know? Let me ask you a very easy question. This is not hard. The Seattle case of the first man with corona. Everybody saw the story. It's been an 2-hour documentary on Frontline last week. This is the first case. In that documentary, and Frontline is PBS, it's liberal. They hate Trump. The attacks on Trump during this documentary are plentiful. But put that aside. Here's what the guys in Seattle said. The man comes in like you, dry cough, but he'd just come back from China. He was worried that maybe he caught something in China and he wanted help. When they got him to the urgent care, not only did the urgent care do the right thing, the guy's on camera. He said, we in Seattle were reading about this disease. The doctor community was all aware of the disease by the time he got to the building. Does that shock you? Because no one acted like they saw it coming. The president is not the one that reads journals. Doctors read journals, and they were deep in them. They were not caught unaware. How long does it take a doctor in Seattle to talk to the head of NYU Medical? You better get the governor on the phone. Okay, don't BS me. It happens all the time. Stay on the phone. I'm getting the governor. Stay on the phone. Let the president know, Governor Cuomo, governor of Washington, 2 doctors on the phone. The pandemic in this article, we think we see. Send the article and let's get moving, people. No, they didn't do that. Big-time smart medical guys did not pick up the phone. NYU, St. Louis, Chicago, Bing, Bing. They didn't do any. They're big-time geniuses, epidemiology people. They didn't do that. They'd be my hero. If you know what, 60 Minutes would be honoring them. They'd be all over them. If those 5 doctors got on the horn and started, whoa, go to page 16, get the journal out. You see that paragraph? Do you see what that says? And guess who helped them? Guess who helped these awesome doctors in Seattle? The CDC processed this sample in 24. They zapped it down to CDC and got their answer back. It's all on television. The guy said it to a camera. So I'd love to know why those doctors didn't call. Where are the genius doctors? Seattle, New York, everywhere. Do they read the same journals? I believe they do. I believe if you're into public health and you're reading this and you're in Seattle and you got one, I would say the last person I'm calling is Donald Trump. I would say I'm calling all the right people, and then somebody at the White House will tell the president. But this is not going to be anything other than doctors on a big, scary word. You know what, Renee, you got to hold on. I'm so late, but you are a fantastic guest. This is the right subject for the day that I lost my Aunt Adeline. I said yesterday on the air, if you were listening, if she made it till today, it would have been 21 days. She did not. She passed this morning. It's a very, right now, the upheaval among the people who love my Aunt Adeline is unfair to them. I think they're all fatootsing, and my heart is out, my arms are open, but is a very difficult subject. So let me do this. The Ed Tyll Show will continue.
Florida Man Radio. You have Power Radio with Justin Clark.
If you're struggling to pay all the bills, here's number one thing. Get an Excel spreadsheet. Put all your bills together. Let's see what you really have out there. Let's look at your mortgage. Let's look at
There's my line.
Let's
look at that mortgage.
Put it all on paper.
Mortgage.
Take a look at what all the bills are that you have every month. This is going to help you make decisions in the future, too.
You have Power Radio. Weekdays starting at 10 a.m. Unfiltered, unafraid on Florida Man Radio.
During this challenging time, Krispy Kreme is doing our part to spread a little joy while practicing health measures. Our 6 Central Florida locations are open for online ordering, pickup, and drive-through. Visit KrispyKreme.com for your nearest location and details. Stay safe, Orlando.
Are you feeling anxious about the coronavirus, social distancing, and stay-at-home orders? Stress and anxiety can be overwhelming. To talk with a professional, call Aspire Health Partners 24-hour support line at 407-875-3700. Visit AspireHealthPartners.com for more. Stay healthy, Orlando.
If you've been involved in a slip and fall accident and are not sure what to do, call me, Glenn Levine, at the Law Offices of Anajar Levine at 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733, and take back control of your life.
Office in Orlando.
Are you ready for the best talk radio to take the airwaves?
Real Talk with G Love
and Kenny the Rocker Wilkerson,
the talented dynamic duo on today's relationship talk that is ego-driven, excitable, with a little sassiness and outspoken opinions
on rock and roll and sex.
You don't want to miss this show Monday through Friday, 7 to 8 p.m.
Live interviews with legendary rock and rollers and upcoming indie artists and much more.
Stay tuned to the newest Woman Radio on Florida Man Radio.
Unfiltered and unafraid.
Don't go without working out. Southeastern Fitness Equipment and South Downtown can provide you with top-of-the-line home gyms, treadmills, ellipticals, spin bikes, and more. Buy the best brands in the industry like Cybex, Water Rower, and Life Fitness. Southeastern Fitness Equipment